days you work, one whole day to play. Come on, everybody, wear your roller skates today. It's Saturday, 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 it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday,
Saturday with Renee. Yeah, what's up, world? Welcome back to Black Liberation Media and Saturdays with Renee, episode 129 of Uninterrupted Weekly Greatness featuring Renee Johnston. I'm Jared Ball. Please like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon. Links in the show description. Renee, how you feeling?
I'm here, man. I'm a little overwhelmed, I think. There's just a lot happening at once. And I was like trying to make sure I was paying attention to the time because I was so caught up in Laura's stream and listening to their conversation. And I wanted to make sure I didn't mess around and look up because you sent a text like, where you at? And then I just got an email from the inquest. I don't know if you get their emails. That's one of the prison policy folks.
Yeah.
And they're doing like a whole thing in New York next week. And I'm like, am I here? Am I around? Can I do that? Because
we're going to have a live from the streets episode.
I don't need, listen, we're pre-recording next week.
Oh, that's true too, actually, which is my fault.
Yeah, it's back to
right?
your fault.
That's my fault, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we might get a post recorded then.
I'm gonna have to check it out. I got to figure out all the things that are happening, figure out what the schedule is, because it looks like 2 days of like panels and stuff. I don't know if they literally just looked at the email and then I heard the music playing. So I was like, let me go back to the tab I'm supposed to be on.
Damn it, Jared. You'd be surprised how often I hear that phrase, by the way, sweary fairy. Damn it, Jared. By the way, though, I mean, yes, it's my fault we have to pre-record for next week, but we did have an incredible live event last week.
It was so much fun.
I just want to shout us all out again for that, and everybody who showed up and all those who saw it on the stream and even later. Please, if you missed it, check out the live from Newark event we did. I had a great time and look forward to doing that again.
Yeah, and shout out to the CMC folks, because even going back, and I don't, watch the shows unless I feel like I need to understand something that happened. But even going back and seeing like the camera angle changes I was like, man, they was doing work.
It was like a whole production, and
they was doing work.
And then so it was very dope. I went back and watched some of it, and just to see what it looked like, and to catch the vibe, and then I did want to clip the what should be still your victory lap over this Target thing, and but yeah, so I saw that too, and big shout out to that whole crew. They did a really good job. So definitely have to link up with them again.
Shout out. Ooh.
Yeah, thank you, Chitty Matcha.
Hold on. Adam says, good morning, everyone. Great live episode last week. I was
right on. Thank you, Adam. Yes, indeed. So thanks everybody who, please do all the things. And do you want us to share right off the top?
Yes, if we could. So I'm going to drop it in the chat first. So folks, and I think people stayed over there, which you got to,
that's fine. Yeah.
These conversations have to be, we have to navigate the spaces, and I'm perfectly happy for folks to stay over with Laura and come here later. But they shared this link for emergency release in Lebanon. So I wanted to take a second and just make sure we shared it here. And this is a direct relief fund to help the folks in Lebanon. So if people are able to support, um, that would be, you know, we, there's just so much happening, and any way that people can give material or any kind of support, it would be really good, in my opinion. So
Yeah, beautiful, magnificent statue of Nelson Mandela in Ramallah, overlooking the valley and the hills of the West Bank. His hand raised in solidarity, gifted by South Africa. Yeah, right on. Um, yeah, there is a ton going on, and it is difficult to not feel overwhelmed and to stay on top of everything. And then the flip side to your point about psychic militancy is that a lot of the contradiction, and I'm the first one to pessimistically acknowledge it doesn't reach the level of impact we would want, but the reality is that there are a lot of good people who are now, I think, increasingly taking to microphones and cameras and podcasts and YouTube channels. So in addition to all that's going on in the world, there are also more opportunities for us to hear about that from sources and in places and in ways that are actually helpful, despite all of the opposite that still goes on. So I do
yeah,
find it hard to not only keep up with all that's going on in the world, but keep up with all of these good people in our, you know,
there's a lot.
spaces
There's a lot. Your
produce.
talk with Sam yesterday was really, really good.
It was. It's a salute to Samantha Yusuf. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
And I mean, I said it. I think, and you actually pulled it up. But every time I listen to Sam talk about having to apologize, that innate initial response of feeling like you have to apologize for being Palestinian, like it hurts my heart every time. But she's so brilliant, and her ability to bring clarity to things within the film industry, I like, it's like unmatched. It's unmatched. And so I saw that you already rescheduled for the next talk. So
Yeah, next Friday. And I don't think that this would be an issue, but I would think that now that we have the time, if you have the time, you should join us. But
I be trying, you know what? I be trying not to budge in too much on folks.
I get it. I hear you. I mean, I know, but I think it's great. And yeah, there's all this trying to balance and whatever. But I think the timing, there is time, that is a week or till Thursday at least to see the film. And if you want, we can talk about it offline, and yeah, of course, and would love it, Renee. So if you can, well, again, we could talk about it more off air, but again,
we'll
folks, we'll be
figure it out.
talking about
I
the
actually
film
probably
From Ground
could.
Zero with Samantha next week, Thursday at 3 p.m. So, and maybe Renee.
So can I just tell you a very crazy story, and then we can bring our guests on and I can stop yabbering. So when I was in middle school, my homeroom teacher was British. He was from the UK. And he literally sang this song to me every morning as I either walked in or walked out of homeroom.
That's funny.
And it was hysterical. So there you go. There's my little insight into my life, everybody.
So, all right, well, folks, as we remind everyone to like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon, links in the show description. We can bring up Bam and Fanon if they're both ready, and get into this conversation with the student Panthers about Black solidarity with Palestine. And welcome to you both. Oh,
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining. And welcome back, since this is the second time. So if you both could introduce yourselves and tell the folks who you are, where you're from, kind of what's going on, and then you don't have to do too much with the update. We can start with the update from your last time that you were on after you both introduce yourselves. But Fanon, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Right, Fanon from Student Panthers, based out of Durham, North Carolina. But yeah, we just keep it short.
Yeah, peace. My name is Bam, from Student Panthers, of course, organizer in Durham and North Carolina in general. But that's the real only intro I got.
That works. So the last time you all were on, you were actually like in the middle of a conflict with North Carolina Central. So if you want to start with kind of where things are, I know there was a lot happening. There was a fundraiser that we had made sure we presented a couple of times. But if you want to give folks first the update on like how that all is still ongoing, and if there's anything else you want to share.
Yeah, I mean, I guess since then, I think we met, was it last May? Since that point, because went through that cycle, the trial that was ongoing, trying to get charges dropped. That took, after May, probably another, I think, 5 or so months. And when we got to September last year, we had like a final date and the charges were dropped. But I guess since then, of course, we were still trying to raise money to make sure we could support all our comrades that were arrested. But primarily, it was just kind of the runaround we got from not only the state or the city, but also the school. There's different things that were presented. But of course, like we kind of went straight forward, like the charges that are being presented, like none of that is actually like reasonable. Doesn't make sense for real. So only thing we chose to do was just like push through. They presented like different methods of like intervention or like mediation sessions with the police and campus police and the school, which we had no interest in. Some might have, but we had no interest in as an organization. So, we just kind of went ahead. And once we got to the final day, charges were dropped and we moved on from there. Since then, I guess like just chugging along, trying to keep going, trying to like, really reinvigorate the work and organizing around like the Speak Out rally has kind of been a continuous process of, agitating students and really engaging on those grounds of the oppression that we faced, and then, some other things as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I think for like more specifics within where we left off from the last time we was up here. One of the first sort of like battles within the legal campaign was trying to get the body cam footage that the school and the city was like pushing hard against not releasing. But luckily, like the judge like ruled out to release the body cam footage, and that was a big win for us because like it was just fucking, it looked terrible. And we could go through it and really see like from their point of view, like, and look at their like listen to their internal conversations about like how they were like trying to point out and arrest agitators like police do at protests, and just like to see and to hear like their thought process while going into it. But they continue to try to delay the trial like they do, like delay the case, continually like asking for continuances like every time we meet, basically trying to like wait us out to see like I guess how good our legal defense would be. But they ultimately never had a case because the arrests were like nonsensical. So it got to a point where the judge was just like, we're not gonna like delay this any further. Um, and the other side had no case, so they were forced to just drop the charges. But like Bam said, after that we've been, continuing to work around, organizing the students and still trying to push like for better housing conditions. But yeah.
Could you just, in case folks weren't, thank you for that. I guess as pleased as you can be for erroneous charges being dropped. I'm glad at least that part of it happened as it did. Can you talk a little bit about the Speak Out rally, just so people understand kind of that background part of it?
Yeah, so basically, we had a Speak Out rally. What was that like last like May or April, man? What was that? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
April 16th last
April
year.
16th. Basically just, advocating for better housing conditions for students. We did a lot of work with talking to the student body and seeing like what were things that were bothering them, and just like being a Black radical organization, we were in the process of trying to figure out how to get students re-engaged with politics, and just through study, like one of the most obvious like methods for like engaging with any people or any community is just like going out and speaking to people, and like letting it be known that you're there and trying to see what's on everyone's mind. And what we came up with was everyone was displeased with the housing on multiple fronts. Like the housing was inadequate, and then there wasn't a lot of available housing. So you had older students like who were being evicted off campus to make room for like incoming freshmen, and then the dorms themselves were not adequate. So there's a lot of different fronts on like what was going on. So we decided to, agitate and organize around that, held a Speak Out rally. And we were continuously harassed up until the rally by the administration. They did not want this to happen. So, they tried different tactics. And ultimately, like their most effective tactic was, sicking the police on students. So at the rally, even before the rally started, they, mobilized like 3 different police agencies, or whatever the fuck you call them. UNC Police Department, off UNC's Chapel Hills Police Department, Durham, like the Durham City Police Department, and then our North Carolina Central Police Department. And at the very beginning of the rally, it started off with the police just like brutalizing a Central student and a faculty member, and it quickly progressed to more brutalization over the next hour or so, with 3 more people being brutalized and arrested for that. Yeah.
Did you want to add anything, Ben?
I guess not much. The main thing, like agitation point around like students being targeted in that way, for us was just talking about how the action, like very simply like advocating for just like better conditions on campus, kind of garnered that sort of response. And what that means, like generally, for like Black people and like I guess students in some capacity on HBCUs, and how like movements or like instances of like some sort of resistance or rebellion like really do bring that sort of response. And HBCUs, of course, as we recognize with the administration, have never really served the purpose of like facilitating any sort of like Black unity around the conditions of Black people. So the administration's quick action of like, okay, we tried to send cease and desist, we tried to send all different types of things, and we're just gonna go ahead and just like send all 3 police forces out to really just like quell students, to brutalize students, to arrest some people. But that was like a main point we kind of touched on, like talking about the histories of like repressions on HBCUs, whether it's like, at Howard or at other schools, especially in the South, like Southern, things like that, that have like had instances similar, and were kind of dealt with like different instances and blows from the administration, and how like easily like whatever faculty or staff, can overlook that. We had like staff that was there during the rally that were like looking the other way while students were, getting their heads bashed in, slammed to the ground. So we're protecting the property, of course, of the school, not allowing students to get in. So they were kind of able to kind of just overlook the call that students specifically had for better housing and allowed for the police to just go ahead. So that's the kind of like points we've been kind of touching on to really like have students understand that, whether it is like an event or a rebellion or whatever, a spontaneous movement for housing, whether it's for just the conditions of Black people, just to better them in general, whatever it is, whenever there's Black rage or Black anger anywhere, there will be a police or like a militant response from whatever city, state, or locale that you in. That's kind of just been a primary point for us to kind of get at when it comes to students. And it's generally the community as well, because we know we're not disconnected. We're still within a community, a historic Black community that has experiences with that as well. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know, Jared, I feel like this probably is more of a touchy topic for you, being at Morgan State, looking at this being, like this whole HBCU situation, where you would think as a Black student going into a college environment, like you pick an HBCU because you want to be around your people. And, like I remember, this was a really long time ago, granted, but I remember when I did my college applications, like part of the reason I applied to Hampton and applied to Howard was because I was like, oh, this is my opportunity to be around my people. And the experience as time has gone by, although granted, obviously there's going to be that because it's an HBCU, but there's a lot more that comes with that title that I think people are not really exposed to. I'm really looking forward to when you finally complete this Not Another World project.
Yeah, me too.
Working on.
In fact, because I was revisiting I'll have to pull it up to get the title again, but the full title and author, but the book about the not historically Black, the history of the Pan-African College versus the HBCU. There's a lot. And there's a lot. I hope one day to finish that project as well. But the one of the thoughts that I was having was, first of all, is that let's not forget that Morgan State is in this constellation of HBCUs. It gets a little frustrating, constantly being in the shadow of Howard and Hampton. And no, I'm just playing. So there's that one, but one thing I actually wanted to ask Bam and Fanon before actually getting into anything else, because I think there's a lot I think that, well, first, let me just say this. There's a lot I think people don't understand about HBCUs and how they're currently constituted, never mind their history. And I think your story, Renee, notwithstanding, and that of many others who say this is why they go to HBCUs, is part of it. Another part of it is the reality that, depending on which one we're talking about, maybe more than others, but a lot of the students, a lot of the faculty as well, and a lot of the administrators as well, are only there because they can't get jobs or can't get placements in universities and spaces they would prefer to be in. So we have to first come to terms with the fact, never mind, again, the history that is not a Black radical history, that is not a history that is meant to serve the needs and interests of Black communities. But HBCUs are in many ways, I think, repositories for a lot of, in many ways, anti-Black sentiment within an African diaspora. There's a lot of class problems, a lot of diaspora war problems. There's a lot of political and ideological problems that just that all get covered under this claim that we are at an HBCU, we are at a Black university, a Black space, and all this and that and the third. Within all of that become all these other contradictions. So some we've heard already in terms of where do faculty end up, the militarized policing of many of these campuses, their connections to broader state and federal apparatuses, et cetera, and so forth. At Morgan, we've seen traditionally, since my time in the last 20 years, at least, we don't see a lot of even the same kind of student activity that we've seen at Central, that we've seen at Howard and other places. And I think there's, again, a lot that to get into why that is and isn't. But we have also seen the administration at Morgan preventively, I guess you could say, crack down on the possibility of students engaging in protests, particularly around solidarity with Palestine and critiques of Zionism in Israel. We've had very explicit warnings, some punishments, and off-the-record hostilities reported, all encouraging faculty and mostly students to stay in line. So I did want to ask all of that to say, finally, to ask Bam and Fanon if you all could talk a little bit about the political environment that you all are experiencing or see at Central, and how you all have evolved some of these movement and protests and responses. I admit I'm curious because, again, for a variety of reasons, we don't see similar activity on the campus of Morgan State. I know students at Morgan go elsewhere and participate, but at Morgan, we don't see that. So I'm very interested in how you all participated in, saw, witnessed, or what you could share with us about how those efforts have arisen there. And if you have any responses to anything that I've said, criticism or otherwise, I'd be interested in what you all think about any of what I just said there as well.
Yeah, I think we definitely agree with like your observation of like the political climate at HBCUs. Like we understand it to be like, especially Central. I'm sure like HBCUs period, like there's a lot of similarities, but like Central especially like has a strong emphasis on like this very like classist and like anti-black sort of like black excellence that is emphasized so strongly like within the school's culture, but also in the academic setting, and also like a weird like pseudo like Black American patriotism, like where it's not only we're training like this next class of like Black petty bourgeois like professionals to go out in the field. We are also like merging these aspects of like Black culture and Black identity with American identity, to the point of trying to make like our own Black identity and cultures like synonymous with America, and identifying with the state, identifying with your local government, identifying with the police department. So that's like something that we're always having to combat. And I think that like across HBCUs, you're going to run into like the type of students that go to HBCUs, the type of teachers that teach at HBCUs. I think it does like create a very difficult like environment for like radical organizers on campuses, as well as I think that because a lot like with your analysis of like where these faculty members, even administrators, would like to be at is really not this HBCU. They feel as though they have to go above and beyond. So like when it comes to like in the research triangle context, for example, like they saw that UNC had protests, encampments. They saw state had protests. They saw all these other universities had protests in the area, and how it gave those schools a bad rap and all this. So like when they heard that like we're gonna do even any semblance of a demonstration, they felt like they had to go above and beyond and really like suppress that at all levels, because they have to prove that like we can do American shit, we can do like political suppression just as well as you guys. But yeah.
It's the black cop effect, where sometimes it's the black cop is worse in certain moments, like trying to overcompensate. Yeah, sorry.
They way worse. Way worse. Like if you've seen like like some of the videos or in the body cam footage, like the only like the Central Police and the UNC Police were like the most aggressive at the rally, and like and really predominantly it was the black officers, the same black officers. They parade around the school, taking pictures with niggas with vests on and shooting basketballs. Like those same dudes that be hanging out in the calf. When it came down to it, they not only brutalized students, but they were happy about it. Like in some of this body cam footage, they were literally talking to each other, excited about like, oh, I hope so and so happened, so I can do so and so. Like that's the kind of energy that they was moving with. And then it's like you got these faculty members, and like in the video I just showed, the first thing they react to is they try and calm students down while they next to a girl getting beat up, brutalized. And at first they looking at a student like, no, calm down. But you would never see them turn to a police officer and tell them that same thing, because they're more interested in upholding civility. They're more interested in upholding like the norm, rather than like actual like advocating for students or for the community members in general.
Yeah, for sure. And like my comrade mentioned, the idea of civility, like the HBCUs, of course, like I guess for me, like announced I've been able to build is like HBCUs and most colleges are that incubator. Like they're the process in which we prepare like Black students and students in general for like life under capitalism and trying to find the best route to like being the most comfortable, being the most successful. And Central like has a very like deep connection to that kind of like guidance and leadership, where they'll, even on the smallest level, they'll make sure that people understand that you can fit into this. You can, find your way through, understanding like living life under capitalism as a successful professional, whatever, first astronaut, first whatever that you can be. And like studying like people like Kwame Ture, which as an organization we study very often, his points are like, you cannot, bring your people up by getting ahead of them, by going above them and bringing them with you. It's never a possibility. So for that, like we've always engaged with students in the community, like understanding that like if it is not a collective effort to get somewhere, it's not collective to be free, then we're not gonna go nowhere. You know what I'm saying? That's how it's always been. But when it comes to civility, like with the protest, it's very clear that the point was to not just like physically repress students, but also psychologically, because they could see the same Black officer that handed them their vest and said, you can hold this, hold that. The same like chief of police that retired and had students crying over him when he left. If you can see that same person that is like, abusing and brutalizing students, it's hard for students that are kind of trapped in that psyche to be like, oh, this is wrong. Oh, this is bad. They can see the violence. And most students understood that the violence was negative. But when you're battling like an upfront violence you can see, and a protracted psychological battle you've been going through with the campus, with the police and the broader society, it's hard to like stick around and say this violence is bad and there must be a response to it. This violence is bad, there must be a consequence to it. So with the entire like Black capitalist psychological like war in a way that like students are going under and Black people in general are kind of going through, it's a conflict that we have to confront and a contradiction we have to confront, and one that we've kind of always held on to say that like understanding that you have no place in a society that is built on extracting from you, that is taking from you, that is built on like utilizing you to repress others, utilizing you to inflict violence on others. And the faces that you see, the Obamas, Kamala Harris's, the Oprahs, all these people that you can see as successful in some way are only there off the backs of other Black people, off the death of other Black people and the suffering of the Black people. So as a point, that civility and the idea of like assimilating in some way is not only like being comfortable being in a position of being a Black professional, under capitalism, but also like almost enjoying when you're able to, individualize yourself and to better yourself off the backs of other people, to enjoy and to actually thrive in that, to see Black suffering and say, well, that's not me. I'm up here doing this, doing that. That's really the thing that Central tries to really push on students, and mostly in general. So I guess like the job for us, as an organization, as a Black radical organization, and we always say that up front, very explicit in that, is to counter that and also create, a new person, new being in a way, like become new, radical, really conscious, students and people within the community that can counter all of these things. Because Durham in general as a city is captured by like a neoliberal politic, a neoliberal electoral politic, a neoliberal like engagement with the community. And as you can see, as a student at Central, you can go down the road to a community that is being targeted by the police, being harassed by the police, that is undergoing a cycle of intercommunal violence based on those conditions, we try to create like a newer class of like revolutionaries, of radicals that can engage in those conditions very clearly, and like very honestly. And again, a battle against an organization like us that is kind of growing and building, as opposed to a state that is constantly in conflict with the people and constantly running game on people, is like one that we understand is going to take a while and is protracted, but also is like so necessary, because if not, we'll have Beyonce number 3000, Jay-Z number 3000 coming out of the classes that we in, and we're trying to avoid that and build, a new class of people that are willing to struggle, for something that's better than this.
So thank you both for that. If this is not for public consumption, feel free to just let me know and we can move on. But if you would, I just ran into a student a week or so ago who had been part of an effort, an organization that I would say is very similar to what you all describe as your focus and your work. But the effort fell through there for a variety of reasons. Their organization didn't hold on. And so I'm wondering if you were speaking to your peers on Morgan State campus, your generational collegiate college peers, but also maybe those who are on the cusp of becoming comrades. What can you share with them about how you all have formed, organized, sustained, and then propelled to this level of active resistance against what your university and surrounding are doing?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like recognizing like the gravity of like the struggle that we've like inherited, and understanding that like failure isn't really an option. So like understanding that like there's a lot of like different things going into like an organization and maintaining that organization. Like for me at least, like understanding that like no matter what, like this is something that I've committed myself to, and I'm going to like do my best like within this space to continue like the work I'm doing, and to continue to progress. And I think that it's definitely hard on especially like student organizations, given like the revolving door effect of like students becoming in and out. And then you have like just like regular interpersonal things within the organization that makes things harder, and just like a lot of things can get messy really quick. But I think that outlining something we did like and had to continuously like redo and tweak is like really outline like some serious like clear like bylaws and like regular like rules, and like just like expectations for the organization for everybody to agree to. You know what I'm saying? That's when like when we have conflict within the organization, for example, we can point to hey, like we agreed to this. Remember, we all signed to, we all wrote this, we all agreed to this. I feel like what you did isn't aligned with this, or like what I did isn't aligned with this. Like, how can we come to some sort of uh, reconciliation with this? And continuously like building that way. So I think like having clear like bylaws and structures is important, and then also just like building like real like tangible connections with like the people in your organization with, like beyond just like these are just people I organize with, like really like spending time with each other, getting to know each other, so that like when there is conflict, it can be worked through. You know what I'm saying? Or like when somebody falls short, like it can't like we have like the familiar how you spell it? Familiarity. Fuck.
Familiarity.
Yeah, see, it fucked you up too. It wasn't just
Yeah,
me.
it is. It's different.
So you had that.
There's a struggle.
So you had that with each other. You know what I'm saying? To continue to like push forward. And then, there's times where like things got like difficult, but like always in the back of my mind, just understand like this is like something that can't fail. And then like studying will really put you into perspective about like where you are. Like motherfuckers think like, oh, you got a lot going on, until you like really start studying motherfuckers who like really had a lot going on and really still 10 toes down. So it's like, okay, well, like if we can't get this student shit together, like we really some frauds. Like we really some frauds. We can't get this together. Like we can't get this together. Like I don't know how effective we would be to the movement. You know what I'm saying? And then like studying like things that are specific to organizing like a piece that Bam had brought in that was really like enlightening was Organization Means Commitment by Grace Lee Boggs, and like going through that like was like just like really helpful, just like how she went into detail about like what organizing means and what commitment means and what that looks like, and like what building a revolutionary cadre takes, and some of the thing and some of the pitfalls that she recognized within various different organizations that like kind of helped us, like, because we're not reinventing the wheel. That's another great thing. Like, we got so many great blueprints and like things to like go off of to continuously like make our analysis better, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Got you. I was just gonna like really like point at the studying aspect, because one thing like after or like in the process of going through the trial, is kind of where I kind of got a lot more involved. And one thing that we really want to get at was studying together, like often, like every week we got something we're trying to read together, study together, get into together, and that really is what grounds even the ability to like handle conflict and to address and to approach like how we want to maintain a constant progress and process or organization. So studying constantly, we also study like the history of organization, like in Durham and in the general area. Like, we talk about like, SNCC being like started, at least a chapter being started at Shaw University in Raleigh, like, and studying what they got into, with similar conditions, in North Carolina, and also like organizations in Greensboro and other places like that. Like the Student Organization for Black Unity, like they were a formation that we kind of got a chance to study and talk about as an organization, to see that they had principles that they marked out, they had bylaws that they put out, and that they kind of aligned with, that we felt that we need to have a similar structure, a similar process. One that, of course, not just taking the history by itself, but was also synthesizing with like our current condition, So one thing, like when it comes to talking to like other students that are trying to organize, that are trying to get into like, some sort of like organizational work, is they have to really combat with the conditions of their community, like very upfront. Like, there's no other way to know how to organize or how to actually bring people together if you don't understand where you are and at what point of history you at, what progressions you recognize. And like, I think Durham as a general, just city that we operate in, we understand the history of Durham has always been one of a constant like effort to really procure some sort of Black misleadership class within Durham. There is that does currently exist. People that who look like us, who talk similar to us, but also have the intentions of being palatable to, a white, ruling class that really want, that sort of access for real. So one thing that any student organizer or organizer in general has to do is to combat the conditions, to actually engage with them very directly. And the chances we had to kind of travel around to different like student organizing conferences and go to different places, the other HBCUs as well, we've kind of had similar conversations that if you're trying to organize, you cannot organize a damn thing if you don't know what's going on outside your campus. You don't know what's going on, what has gone on throughout the history of people who have been moving in some way. Like being Student Panthers, the name itself, like, is kind of embedded in history, like knowing that we are honoring and somewhat inheriting a legacy of like the Black Panther Party and those who organize, in that formation. And there are multiple different iterations of that formation. Of course, we're not replicating or trying to redo anything. We understand there's a history of progression that we come from, So that's the main thing. Historical analysis, historical connection, and historical conditions mixing with the current conditions and trying to find a way to fully understand them, to always move with them and organize around them. Because you're not going nowhere without your history. You're not going nowhere without the conditions being actually explicitly, detailed and realized, by you, by your community, and by your organization. So,
Right. Yeah, like really what you're getting at, just like having a serious like politic. Like you can't really have no organization or student group without like a real like a coherent like politic to like base how you guys are analyzing the like social phenomenon that like you're experiencing. But yeah.
Thank you. And I want to shout out Ashley A. Rob in the chat, because she has been such a good resource for me. She's always sending me stuff, which is so appreciated, because it's really hard to keep track of all the things that's happening. And me being in New Jersey, I don't have no real sense of what's going on in North Carolina. So I always appreciate it when information is shared. But there was a question about A&T, and I think because you all are talking about, going to other conferences and dealing with other HBCUs, I am curious about the thoughts on this. So Leah says A&T is very captured, graduating the most Black engineers, etc. What similarities, if anything, are they seeing at A&T? Is there a solidarity with any student orgs there? Is there a chapter there on that campus?
Yeah, like getting like one of our like larger goals is like being able to get to a point where we can like establish like whether it's a sister organization or like another chapter of Student Panther or just a Black radical formation on other HBCUs, period. And obviously starting with the ones closest to us, like North Carolina A&T, like Shaw University. But at this moment, there isn't one, and we don't really have a lot of like connection with any student organizations on A&T campus. We know like a few individuals, but as far as like radical formations, like not really. And now, as far as like the similarity between like A&T and Central, like surrounding like the political like culture, I think it's damn near like the same exact school, like but with like a different focus. Like A&T is like super into engineering, and like Central is like super into like law and law enforcement and shit like that. But like the culture is almost like synonymous, and like even like we're supposed to be like the big rivals, like that's like our rival school. It's almost the same shit, but A&T is like a much larger school, almost like 3 times as large. Um, So that's something we are trying to tap into. And I do think there is potential at every HBCU to have like a radical formation, even though that like these schools are like incubators for like the Black Miss Leadership class, the next generation of Black Miss Leadership class. There is always like a foothold for like Black radical politics, because like no matter how much conditioning like people are experiencing, they can't fool everybody. Everybody not chumps, and I don't believe that like every student at A&T is not chumps. So even if it's 2 or 3, we can get them together and start to get something shape.
Did you want to add something there?
No, all I could say is that we do know that like there is some capacity of student movement at A&T. Like they have like recently like been talking about like the voting centers that were like I guess axed, so that they have no access to that anymore, and we're kind of organizing around that. Which of course, like we understand that Black people will be motivated generally by like things being taken away, and like, there always will be a unity in action around that. Like when it comes down to voting being challenged or taken away or whatever, like there'll always be a movement around that. For us, engaging on that front, we have never advocated openly for like an electoral strategy. We never kind of went into that. We never like openly stood firmly against that, but also like we have a position where it's like we don't really see voting as like as a pathway, not in the way it's practiced currently, at least. So engaging A&T on those grounds has kind of been like something we've been theorizing around, like how we can try to agitate past this current stage. We are always like good. It's always good to see like students moving in some capacity, like trying to go somewhere, because
Right.
like at the end of the day, I'd rather see something that can be worked with and tapped into than nothing. And like my comrade said, like there's always potential and capacity for Black radical movement. But like right now we're seeing like, again, like Kwame Ture would say, like there's very good at unity in action, but it's unity of ideology that we have to really get at and get towards. And that's kind of what we're trying to push. So we've been able to tap in with other campuses, like especially like some non-HBCUs as well, that have a Black student, I guess, capacity or have been interested in, moving in some way. But at the A&T, there's an opportunity there, just like, because North Carolina, of course, has like, I think it's the most HBCUs in the country, if I remember that right. So there's always capacity somewhere when it comes to Black people being, put together. And there's unity somewhere that can be found, whether it's voting or other things. It's just we're trying to get somewhere we can be united and have like a general Black radical student, network that we can tap into and always be active in. But that's all I can
Yeah.
really add.
It's important to us to like do that work, because like if not, like the people, like the students would continuously like be misled, or like they were protesting their voting little spot being axed and taken away off campus. I mean on campus to move off campus. and everybody was upset, which is great, and everybody was wanting to do something, which is also great. But like their solution was like to like comply harder. They were like, we're gonna get a bunch of niggas together and we're gonna all walk to the next voting booth. Like that's like so far out of the way. And they're like, we're actually so mad, we're gonna comply. And it's kind of just like moving that focus towards something else, like really like shifting the anger towards like something specific, like the root of the issue. But yeah.
Thank you. And so
Bennett College, formerly run by Julian Malveaux, kind of rests my case, yeah.
And I just want to make sure that I'm fairly certain this is correct, but Central is a 4-year school. It's a undergraduate programs only. There's no graduate programs, correct?
They have graduates.
They have graduate, yeah.
They do have graduate programs.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't 100% sure. And so I'm curious about like the work to ensure that the program remains when the current students are no longer part of the campus, right? So is there like what does that look like for you all as you know, because always like having bylaws, doing the work of actually learning together and all these things, but eventually you all graduate, right? And so what does that look like, you know, for you all now, trying to ensure that when your leadership that's in place now, when the comrades who are in place now, who are kind of making sure things are going, graduate, like what happened? Like, is there a plan? Is that part of the conversation?
Yeah, I would say that like we always understood that we are not confined to like the common like student organization. Like we are like a community organization as well. Like of course we operate on the campus, but like when it comes down to what happens when we graduate, we know that like struggle doesn't stop like after we get our degrees and walk the stage. Like we still have to still engage. And like the general idea is of course for like the organization to be very active and present in the general community in Durham. So that's not going to end, or like we're still going to be present and active in that capacity. But we do know that we have always like a open door for people who want to engage with us, who want to join. We've been able to do that for the past year or so, just to get new members and to really have like a wider base of people. But I think like for us, we recognize that like there has been an issue with like students who organize a little bit, they graduate, and then that's it afterwards. And again, like being a student is not just like when you get to apply and you get into a school, you're a student forever. Like you always will be, especially when it comes to like the Black radical tradition, you're always a student, you're always learning. So Student Panthers is, yes, like based on the campus and it is based on like students who are organizing from Central, but also like we're going to continue to be studying under the, you know, tutelage of the history of Black radical struggle. So the plan, I guess, for us was to just always have and always be open to accepting new membership, to have people who are ready to kind of do and take on the tasks that we do every day now, of course, but also knowing that like, you know, we're never going to be limited to, you know, like whenever like people are done. Because like we have some comrades, of course, that we've talked to from other organizations that confronted different roadblocks when it comes to like being done with school. And we've always kind of said that like, you know, struggle doesn't stop at the end of the day. So we're going to still be involved, still be active, you know, regardless of whatever year we in, but, you know, still like having a plan to make sure that we have a wider base of students and people that can like still do the tasks of the organization and be trained on that and be ready to, you know, engage in whatever capacity, you know, and that's like how we've been trying to like make sure that things never slow down. They always keep going. But again, yeah, like it's a program that we are continuing to build and continue to kind of, you know, purpose when it comes to getting new people and having a wider base of people within the organization.
Yeah, and then we keep everything that we create, like we keep it stashed away, we keep it organized, like so like if there ever was a time where like specific people aren't involved, like they have like things to go off of. They're not just building from scratch. And then we also got, you know, like we got a couple like of the younger comrades that are just like super sharp. You know what I'm saying? Like Bam himself is like on the younger side, and then we got a couple of other like younger comrades who are just like really committed, like super sharp. But it is like a pitfall of like student organizations, or just organizations and period, with just like when I guess the leaders or whatever like move on, the organization sort of fizzles out. And still trying to find more ways to, combat that. Yeah.
Thank you. And I do want to make sure that we pivot to like the work that you're doing now, because I know that was part of the initial conversation when you reached out. So I think my only other question, and this is just my own curiosity, if you could, because somebody questioned in the chat if y'all, like you should read Che, and I'm like, that's a really broad assumption that these brothers haven't already done that, but we're gonna leave that there. But could you just, before we go to what the work is now, could you talk about what this study entails so that people understand that when you all say you're studying, that you are studying? So please, if you will indulge us, thank you.
It's not a bad question. I know that like people are always interested to see what those who are in movement are reading and studying. But I will say, of course, we went through Jay. I think that's something that like we recognize that studying everything and anything is very essential. But like as for us, we always have centered our study on like those who, the Black radical organizations and formations that kind of allow us to even be here in the first place. But you always honor that, the fact that like, because there were organizations that were about the same thing that we're about, that were about liberation, that were working towards the same Black freedom we're talking about, that we study, we know that they are the reason why we're here and we study them, So we talk about the Panthers being a very primary study point for us, understanding that their principles, their 10-point program, their disciplines are something that's we kind of not modeled after, but we try to make work and make understand how we develop them to really fit now for our current organizational, like structure and how we were built. But we always like target and talk about like, the specific aspects in which organizations needed to develop past the different issues that organizations ran into as they were kind of functioning, learning and growing. So like we like try to, touch on like issues of like internal organizational misogyny, internal like, patriarchal practice of organizers of like Black organizations, try to tackle that. Cause like our organization is primarily like Black women and femmes, like primarily that's what we have. So we understood that to be able to be a current movement, to be able to be a current organization, we had to be very grounded in what it meant to be an organization that struggled against everything. It didn't just leave things on the side to come back to later. But then, of course, like more specifically, we study like organizations, informations like the BLA is a good example, which we study their study guide, their political dictionary, SNCC, of course. I think this is really like, that's really what we try to center ourselves on, because like a lot of what we understand the issues to be is that organizations, they begin to move and do things and the grounding aspect never comes through. So then you're just kind of moving and just doing things. And again, like it's always been like said that not all work is good work, especially if it's not grounded in a radical politic and the history of that politic too. So like the Black Liberation Army has been a good example. And of course, what they got into is really like, studying and really being very clear on the conditions and how they chose to struggle against them. So, of course we focus on student organizations as well in their history. But we have such a like rich archive when it comes to Black radical history and Black radical organizations, such an archive that we can tap into all the time. It's never like an aspect that we are not able to kind of go and find something to study together. And the main part for studying has always been collective. It's never been individual. We always say we're going to read this today, read this tomorrow, and keep going, keep studying. We study like right now we on Asada right now, about a few weeks into Asada, read through Blood on My Eye by George Jackson. We read through some smaller documents talking about different levels. Of course, the Grace Lee Boggs piece that we've continued to study up until now. We just made sure that, we're always tackling the topics and subjects of, involving Black people in Black radical struggle and what that means and how that transition from the unconscious to conscious, what that looks like. So I think that's kind of been the main like route that our education and our sort of study has gone. And of course, Che and a lot of different revolutions from other countries has also been a clear part of our study too, knowing that like we are a student organization or a smaller organization, but we also still connected to a general history of struggle against, colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism. And of course, like, also grounding ourselves on like what anti-Blackness looks like and how that is baked into how in which we are engaged by the United States and other, imperial powers as well. What that means for a broader African diaspora, So yeah, like that's, I guess, like a peek into how we do study. But the main point we always get at is that if we're going to study something, we are going to do that together. And as we do that, we're going to engage in not just like, appreciating the history, but also critiquing it and scientifically analyzing it as well. That's always been a primary point for us. And that's kind of what has grounded us as an organization to keep us going to where we're at now. But
I appreciate that. I honestly asked the question just to be an asshole because somebody in the chat, like, I was like, how have you listened to anything that these two said and like made that assumption? So
they gotta be trolling. My name is Fanon on the joint.
Exactly.
You just don't read, beloved.
But in fairness, I wanted you to make the point, right? Like I think it's perfectly reasonable to point out like this is what it means to actually do the work to become a true revolutionary, because you had it definitely petty Lula. That's it. Oh, always.
People be like, why do you go?
I want y'all to know that did I introduce you to that dude?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm happy to give you the credit for it, though.
I remember I saw that shirt and I was like, "Oh, this is Jared."
It's the funniest shit ever, and he's so petty. You have to sign up to follow him. You can't even just follow. It's like one of them. You got to sign up to follow counts. Like it's crazy.
Sorry to digress, but I appreciate you really clarifying, because it is important that people understand like what the work is actually being done. But as I said, when you reached out, part of it was really to talk about the work that you're doing now and some of the things that you all are working on as an organization. Jared, I don't know if you have any other like background questions, but I would, I want us to make sure we make that pivot so we get to that information.
yeah, no doubt. So to start off, I think reaching out, we kind of in the period of really just kind of going along with how things have progressed like in this country and have progressed like when it comes to Black people, and the idea of what like international solidarity looks like based on the conditions, the collective conditions of like being colonized, pretty much being a colonized people. We understand Black people to be colonized within the United States and have like tried our best to really engage with the community on that basis, to say like you are not dealing with the conditions within the United States just by chance, just because you are just only Black. That is the reason why, but there is like a deeper, more colonial reasoning for the conditions that we face, especially when we talk about like the idea of like the direct hyper exploitation of like Black people, and that grounding ourselves in those conditions kind of leads us to understanding that we are not there's not a single front of that sort of colonial domination. And that's how we get to like talking about Palestine and the conditions of people, in the West Bank and also in other places as well, across the diaspora for us as well. So I think we wanted to make those connections very clear. And in the collaborations that we've been able to have with other organizations and other campuses, in Durham, we kind of started a series of events where we kind of held a teaching to kind of talk about and illustrate these conditions. We kind of pointed on like different points that are connected. So the levels of oppression that we all face as Black people and for Palestinians. We talked about the use of like prison and prison psychology and the idea of political prisoners on both sides of that. For us, like political prisons have often been like a very primary point for us. We understand that like people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, people, like Kamal Siddiqui and other like individuals that are in prison for their work for the organization, for the organizational practice, and then going to Palestine, thinking about like like Ahmad Sadat and other names that we can think of that were in prison for their political activity, in opposing the Zionist entity over there. So these are just connections we want to make because we know that the disconnection is a primary goal of like the United States like counterinsurgent project to make sure that we can never make connections between struggles here and struggles elsewhere. And we grounded in the history, of course, of the Panthers being connected to the PLO, and how like that was built through an understanding of the collective decolonial position. And like that is why we felt that like in the South and in a place like Durham that is often being combated with disconnecting these things, it's a very heavy need for a real international solidarity and defining what that actually looks like. Because sometimes solidarity can look like very simple things that might not actually be pushing anything forward, but we're trying to embody a solidarity that is actually, function, is actually direct, is actually explicit, very explicit. So sometimes the language of like being anti-Zionist and being anti-colonial can be very scary to some people because it is tackling a very large concept. But for us, like, we understand that this is a very essential position for us. And the work that we've been kind of concentrated on now is clearly illustrating the lines of connection between us and those who are oppressed in the third world and elsewhere, other colonized groups of people. And often you see like even within the United States, you could see like a disconnection being like fomented by the Black misleadership class or by any other like ruling class entity that says that like even like Black people and like immigrants are disconnected because they have the jobs and you don't, or whatever issues or whatever things they try to push to disconnect, making those lines very clear. The exploitation that happens in, a community of immigrants, the same one that happens within a Black community, or within like a Black immigrant community, same thing that happens within a Black American community, whatever you would call that. So like, that's kind of been like really understanding the lines of like what the subjugation looks like and where it comes from and who is perpetrating it is like what we're trying to get at to say that these are not disconnected things. If you are being, say if like my comrade was getting hit with a brick on one side of the road and I get hit with a different type of brick on the other side of the road, of course, whoever's throwing the brick is the one that is at fault there. You know what I'm saying? That's a very clear like example. We can't just disconnect these two things and say, oh no, it's a different person, different issue, different. These are all connected struggles, and interconnected struggle is like one of the strongest forms of, resistance, because when it is connected to the conditions internationally, it's hard for any like counterinsurgent, any, like imperialist power or agency to fully repress that, because that condition never goes away. But what does happen?
Bam, that's crazy. I have to interrupt. I'm sorry. I think it would be far better for the two people being hit with bricks on either side of the street to start throwing them at each other and find the solution that way. I think you're talking this crazy solidarity nonsense. Throw the brick at the other one who got hit and then yell at them for not getting hit the way you got hit. That's what I think should be decided. I'm sorry. I just had to. I can't let the quality of this show sink to such a level without raising some kind of challenge. I apologize.
No, I got you. And that would be honestly being at a HBCU or campus like Central, like they don't specifically like engage on those grounds, but the idea of the hyper individualism is kind of what gets Black people there, So like, why it probably would be like, is the easier option to just like disconnect and say, okay, like I'm Black and I need to go and be successful as a Black person. I need to go ahead and get what I need to do as a Black person. We are, being subjugated because we are Black, and no one else knows what this can be like. No one else is in the same realm. No one else is dealing with the same, class of oppressors, right? So like individualism is also what we're also countering as well. Because when you're Black, it's actually a targeted point to make sure that you are never connected to anybody else. Even like, within like somebody's home, even within your own house, you can disconnect it. Like within your neighborhood, you can disconnect it. So, from a campus, HBCU that's in a historical Black community in Hayti, disconnected from the people that are in that community as well. You know what I'm saying? So we're kind of always going through a process of like connecting these dots to make sure that we are never like isolated in struggle, isolated in movement, So when it comes to organizing around the solidarity of Palestinians and Black people in the United States and diaspora, it's always about connecting the lines so that we can actually struggle in a more like solidified and fortified movement too. Because a lot of times you have holes somewhere, it's hard to move past that and struggle through that. So that's what we try to get at with the current work and current projects that we're getting at today.
I appreciate that. And I mean, the clarity with which you speak about our connected struggles is something that I feel like we talk about consistently. Um, because so many people miss that, right? Like so many people miss that it is literally the same imperialist oppression that is happening on all sites. And if you can get to the root of understanding that we all have the same enemy at its core, like things would, I feel like, be a lot easier. Um, so do you want to talk a little bit about like some of the specifics of what you all are doing? Is there anything that you want people to be aware of that we can support, that, like anything else that's, really geared towards the actual activities and actions?
Yeah. So, like I said, we had kind of started like a, I guess, a 3-part program with another student organization, where we had held to start off a teaching talking about solidarity, then like a more general discussion and like art build project, that we were like really trying to bring students together to really talk about like what clear connections there are. Because one thing we also noticed is that like within like the actual real world, like where people actually were working and moving, there isn't necessarily so much thought that can be put into, like what these connections are. But like more on like the online realm of like people who have like a platform who speak about disconnecting these struggles, that's kind of what people are subjected to, very often. So like you'll see those who are like online that might be saying like Palestinians are struggling over there. We're here. There's no connection. We need to fight for ourselves, whatever. We need to go invest in Target or some bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like some real nonsensical that like really has no like actual practical value, but like ideologically and like I just thought wise, people do kind of flock towards that. Um, but as for like what we have going on, like we are like in the process of planning some things that, you know, we understand to be essential now, and something, of course, that we going, of course, keep internal because that's kind of how we try to remain. But I think like generally the points that we push and the programs that we talk about are meant to just facilitate at least a general skepticism to start off with, to say, okay, if it is not me that thought about this originally, where did the thought of being disconnected come from? Who is pushing that? Who is actually talking about that? Who's actually benefiting from that? So we like learned about a CIA project called Operation Chaos, where they had got into like the practice of trying their best to disconnect international solidarity. So one of their main targets, of course, was the Black Panther Party and the Palestinian Liberation Organization and the PFLP. So they said that that is one of the biggest threats, to our sovereignty, our imperial sovereignty. So we must disconnect that. And that's like through the events that we went to and we kind of held and planned, we had got at that point in saying that like this is a very clear project. There's no real disconnection, but the project is to obfuscate the truth of international solidarity. Because again, like the state, and we know what the truth is. We can see the truth very clearly. And the state that we are living under does not try to change the truth. They just try to obfuscate, what that is and who can look at it and who has the actual ability to observe it honestly. So the truth is that Palestinians and Black Americans, there is no disconnection between the conditions. The only difference is the geography, and at least some practices of counterinsurgency, but they all come from the same network. So like, I think when it comes to like the actual practice that we're engaging in, we just generally are like looking to politically educate the community, like very directly, and just say that like whenever we have, a movement that we're trying to connect, those who will benefit from it being disconnected are working against us constantly, working against the movement constantly. So we just try to agitate around that. And support wise, like people who understand this fact and know this history should be in their communities actually engaging around that and talking about that. But also we can't connect internationalism without engaging the direct conditions that we're facing currently, so it's a constant multi-effort, multi-front process that we engage in.
Yeah, and like making the connection like to like um I'm trying not to say like too much, but like understanding that what it means to be like occupied in the context of the Palestinians, and then what it means to be occupied in the context of Black people in the States, and like who are the first people to be an obstacle to our liberation anytime that we organize and demonstrate, like what is that physical manifestation and who are those people. um, um, and so what we are trying to get into, is obviously education, educating people on these interconnected, struggles, and then obviously like giving people a way to tangibly like take action against them, like in our context, like uh, yeah, like the natural progression to understanding that not only does Central not care about your housing, right? They don't care about your housing. They actually don't even care about you. And not only do like they not care about you, they actually want to harm you. And who will they use to harm you? You know what I'm saying? So like what's the natural progression, of that sort of thing, and what is now the next struggle to like embark upon, you know what I'm saying? You know. Uh, but yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm curious about some of, like, as a group, as students, as organizers, as community members, dealing with some of the pushback that comes with this battle, right? And I said it before we came on, like part of what I think about as I see the expansion of what is going on right now, the attack on Iran, the capture of Maduro, the attack on Cuba, the gathering of forces within the Caribbean to turn against Cuba, like all of these things, right, as they're happening. And I think to myself, if we had a stronger base of people who understood the connections when people initially started to really pay attention, and I understand that the Palestinian struggle and those who have organized behind Palestine, this has been an ongoing thing for decades, but there was a unique time in this most recent genocide with more, it seemed like more people were actually like, wait a minute, what's happening? And I think about, that the efforts that there were when students started, when the encampments were going, when the students were really pushing the struggle, how the government pushed back, how the schools pushed back, and how it essentially silenced that movement, right? Like for as much as there's work happening still all around the country and on various campuses, that movement of multiple encampments happening on multiple campuses across the country stopped, right? And part of it was summer, and then it was what started happening between the government and the schools actually responding. Then we had NYPD shooting off shots inside school buildings, and then we had community members attacking students at UCLA. Like there's such a large list of reasons that pushback resulted in, when school restarting, the encampments did not restart, right? And I think about how the fact that they, and when I say they, I'm talking about these governmental structures, the imperialist powers, the moneyed people, the Black misleadership, their ability to almost squash that fight is how we end up now, right, in a larger war. It's how it ends up now that you have more, people in Lebanon being, I mean, not that they had ever stopped bombing Lebanon, but, like this, it has expanded, right? And it's in part because the moment in time that existed in which people were actually speaking up, it faltered when the state came down on it, which is what happens, right? Like the state responds and then people get afraid, people don't want to lose their jobs, people don't, all these things start happening. And I'm curious about, because your work is ongoing. When you were here last May, we were talking about the same thing, like the teaching around Palestine and the support of the Palestinian movement. And so I'm curious about the pushback that you all are getting, you know, from the campus and beyond the campus, and what you all are considering and thinking about in order to ensure that this part of your work does not get stopped, right? Because it's that important that it continue. And hopefully, I know that was a long, convoluted way to my question. So
I got the general idea. You want to go first, bro?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think first and foremost, like just like as an organization or like any radical organization, understanding that like if we're talking about liberation, like that is never gonna look like it's not gonna be support against you're not gonna be supported by the very systems you're trying to like oppose. You know what I'm saying? So like, opposing the state looks like engaging in things that would be deemed illegal, like opposing your university's actions is going to put you in direct opposition to the administration. And as an organization, understanding like what that means and understanding that like what you're putting at risk and having to come and reconcile with like what you're willing to lose. You know what I'm saying? So like having a collective understanding of like, yeah, we are taking a risk, and that's a risk that like we have to take. Another thing is like I got into a conversation with some of the students at Columbia University on this very topic about like the effectiveness of encampments, how like the after effects of the encampments, and like how bad the school started cracking down on sort of demonstrations and encampments, or just like radical student protests in general. And some of the strategies they employ are the same strategies they've been using for decades, kicking out the leaders, or like the most skilled organizers, and making it harder for students to get organized, and then instilling students with fear. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of that fear just stems from not being like super sure in your organization and the support you have. Like it's different to struggle like when you're not by yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like you have people behind you. Like like if I get kicked out of school now, like I'm gonna have people who are gonna support me. But as far as like pushback, like specifically in our context, like yeah, like especially like I mean, we went out of our way to like not register as an organization for various different like reasons. Obviously, if you're gonna be engaged in radical shit, like you probably shouldn't register on your campus. Now, some radical organizations do register, for various other things. Like some organizations get like a lot of funding from schools. Like Central is not like a super big school, so even if we did register, we weren't getting like a shit ton of money anyway. So like it wasn't really a conversation to be had. But as far as like after, obviously we won the legal battle, but that does not like stop the school from like penalizing people like within their own like structure, like academic structure. So like there were people who had consequences like for participating in the protests. But obviously like us preparing for that, we were able to support them and help them through that. As well as a faculty member losing their job, we were able to support them and help them through that in whatever way we could. But yeah, Bam, if you want to pick up, you got it.
Yeah, nah, and I think like one of the like primary points that we really needed to like hammer home within the organization was that we have like a very like our politics are very, of course, like open, of course, with the history, but also very strict. Like there are things that we will just not do and not engage with. So when it comes to any sort of conflict resolution, as like pertaining to like the legal trial in a battle that we was in, there was no conversation about any sort of collaboration or conversation or even like mediation with any of the forces that were responsible for the brutalization. And like within that is kind of how we cement ourselves as like an ongoing organization, by being strict in that way, understanding that the politics that we hold, the principles we unite around are what keeps this project going. because regardless of like whatever condition, you know, whatever like issues we may have, we have an underlying set of principles that really like allow for us to work through these things, work through different issues. So like when it comes down to how we engage with like that legal battle, we knew that from the start that there was no way that we were going to appease to any state, any city, and do what they were asking of us in lieu of like some sort of resolution. So within that, of course, we dealt with different conflicts internally and externally, which lead to a lot of different things. But we came out of that understanding our principles were firm and we're not shifting in that way. There was no collaboration even being talked about. And in recent times, like observing like things that have gone on, whether it's like the Prairie Land defendants that were recently convicted down in Texas, and their organizational activity kind of getting into that point, or like any other like student organizations with the encampments that of course we spoke about that dealt with levels of repression. And myself personally being a part of like some sort of planning and the actual encampments, you know, in the area, dealing with levels of repression too, that like make you understand very clearly. Because I think it's an age-old adage that have been repeated by many Black revolutionaries of the past, that repression breeds resistance, you know, and that's something that we recognize that's very clear. And our resistance is also like being very firm politically. And like we usually hold like every week, we hold like community meetings where we talk about different concepts and topics. And recently we talked about like, you know, the international condition of like what imperialism and how these forces have attacked and genocided within different countries. We spoke about Iran, we spoke about different places. And that was really just to understand that our condition, of course, is not set. It is not only a domestic condition, it's international. And in that way, like we can broaden ourselves enough to understand that we're not struggling in a straight line. We're struggling almost creating like a larger apparatus of organizational activity that wasn't just tackling one thing at a time, that was trying to function simultaneously, you know. And again, that only comes through like a hardening of the principle, hardening of the politic, you know, really fortifying that, you know. So I think for us, like any pushback we've received or like any conflicts that we've had, we always like have found a way to resolve them very quickly. When it's external, you know, external conflicts, we usually don't listen to much of anybody who's on the side of the state that says you're doing it the wrong way. Like when it comes to engaging in Durham itself is like functioning as a counterinsurgent organization. Like Durham, the city itself functions in that way. The city council, the government, that they function to make sure that there is no meaningful movement that happens outside of the guise of a government building or city government meeting. So in that case, we're kind of dealing with an upfront, you know, effort to quell organization, to remove movement from the eye of people. And that's something we have to conflict with every day. You know, we see like people who are part of Durham government that are engaging in different methods of like policing and trying to utilize like artificial intelligence to improve how they criminalize people, right? So like an effort like that, dealing with a city that is constantly trying to find better ways to be, you know, a very strong counterinsurgent, repressive, you know, city, you know. So that's an effort that we have to really conflict with. And that is the constant conflict that we're in. But like most like people that are organizing also in the area that we have ideological conflicts with, we always engage directly. Like we never like, you know, hold back language, or we always are very explicit. Hey, if you're doing something that is clearly not going anywhere, we're going to say, hey, this is bullshit. Here's what we need to actually go ahead and do. Not to overstep or to stay on top of anybody's head, but to say that like, we can break down clearly step by step how you're going to actually harm your people instead of help. And here's how we understand the history of what organization is and how we need to actually move that can help improve and benefit Black people, you know, primarily. So with all that, with dealing with the militarization of police in Durham and in general, with dealing with the levels of like Black capitalist propaganda, we just recognize that creating and spending hours and hours like fortifying a specific politic and principles is how we were able to continue on as an organization. It's how we are still able to function after dealing with different things. And really, that's it. I think only thing I can say is that one of the few things that we've never kind of cut ourselves off from is interacting and collaborating with other organizations. One thing we do always come to is like needing to sit down and say, here is who we are politically, explain where you are politically to us so we can find a way to have a conversation based on that. It doesn't always go good, doesn't always go great, and that's the point. But it's honest. It's an honest conversation on what organization needs to be, and that's one thing that we never can betray, because we defined organization ourselves. We knew where we were going with this, and we decided that, we're going to be very explicit and clear. And if people not fucking with that, then, we're going to keep going regardless. That's how it goes. But, yeah.
And then, like, just one final thing to, like, something else you had said, Renee, was basically about the repression and, like how it's to be combated. And I don't know if, like the level at which, like, nationwide these sort of, like, efforts to suppress, like, student movements sort of ramped up. I don't know if, like, we necessarily have the answer for that either. You know what I'm saying? Like, the one thing I took away from, like, when I was chatting with the comrades from Columbia University is that, like, they did not, and this is from their point of view, they did not have a real way to, like, counteract or defend themselves against the level of, like, physical suppression and repression, and just, like, from the school, like, whether that be, like, policies or different things, or from the city. And so I think that, like, just as a movement, whether it be a student movement or not, like, we have to have, like, actual, like, tangible ways to defend ourselves when, like, the inevitability of, like, the state or the city or whatever structure we're organizing against responds with an overwhelming amount of force, because obviously we're not in position of power. You know what I'm saying? So being able to, like, actually get to the point where we're able to engage in struggle at a heightened level, where it's just not just like we're having, like, a demonstration or like or um an encampment that we can't really defend. You know what I'm saying? But yeah.
I really appreciate that, and thank you for your candor with those answers, because it's important that people understand that this is a struggle, right? So there's always going to be internal struggle, there'll be external struggle, there'll be, like, how do we navigate within these spaces moving forward so that we have comrades outside of our organization that we can call upon when we're trying to do things. And I don't know how familiar either you are with Lara Shihab, but her book's about to come out on psychic militancy, and I'm, like, chomping. I can't wait to get my copy in the mail so that I can read it. But these conversations about the fortification and like that, I think especially, like, out of Columbia, I'll say for sure, like, out of Syracuse, which is where I went and where I'm still in touch with some of the current students as they try to do their encampment. I think people really, in some ways, underestimated how, like, I don't think people were understanding how devious and maniacal and ghoulish, right, the state is, right? Like, I think students on some of these campuses were like, oh, well, we're students. Like, they're going to let us do, like, the things that we want to do. They're not going to send Popo out to, like, shoot up a campus building. Like, I don't think they really understood that when you have the audacity to actually stand up for the thing that the state is adamant you don't stand up against, things turn real quick. Like, the shift from you're a student who's allowed, like, student freedoms on campus, because, like, the shift in that is, like, automatic the minute they realize you're saying something that they're not trying to hear you say. They're not trying to have you say to other students. They, like, and you all also, like, in your way, learn this lesson doing this speak out. And you would think that on a college campus, that if the students who actually live on campus and have to live within the housing that's provided are saying, here are concerns with the housing that's being provided, that the campus would not become lethal, right? Would not become a source of serious oppression and physical violence, because you're saying, like, can we get enough housing, right? Like, it's really wild when you think about it. And so I appreciate, like, the candor with that, because I think sometimes people go into a multitude of situations, and it doesn't have to just be about Palestine. It could be about a lot of things, right? I think people go in with this false idea of what, like, well, there's the Constitution and we have the First Amendment and like all these things that in the end they have zero application to your actual ability to say and do the thing that you feel like is the right thing to say and do, because if it's not aligned with what the state wants you to say and do, the oppression is rampant, right? um so I really appreciate that. And I don't know if you have, I saw you come off mute, Bam. I don't know if you have something that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I was just gonna add. I think I do appreciate that perspective. I think we're in a time right now that's like highly exceptionalized too. Like I think about the Trump administration kind of being in this position of power where now people are seeing for the first time like what state violence looks like, and what that actually appears as. And like it's difficult because it's so people are very saturated with that. When you see ICE that has killed so many people up until now, in the past year or so, like you see that as okay, this is new. This is a new feeling, a new like moment in time. This is a whatever. And then when they call the United States fascist as of 2026 instead of as of 1776, you know what I'm saying? Like when they start here and not before. And that's one thing that like we've always kind of recognized as an issue, because yes, like this is a progression, and what happens when you combine colonial expansion and genocide together, you get this mix, this progressed mix of this iteration of state violence. That's what you get, right? But we understood that this is a long history that has kind of been building as time has gone on. One book that we read together was Tip of the Spear by Orsami Burton. And one thing about that book and how we see the university and the prison is using the term like microcosms. Often like these two places, these two institutions function as microcosms for a broader society. And the prison, and understanding that like, that's kind of weird because I'm familiar with like Laura Shia with the psychic militancy aspect and how I connected that point to that book, and reading the book together, understanding what the fortification of the mind and the body looks like when you're resisting repression that clearly. And within the prison, like that is a very upfront conflict that you have to deal with, right? Very upfront conflict. And that's what, Dr. Byrne was able to really explain very well. And for us, taking that text and applying it generally meant that we knew that the only way to wage a just struggle, to wage a struggle that was actually going to move us somewhere, was to be heavily fortified and to actually scientifically analyze our conditions past just like, well, Trump is bad, we must stop Trump, and after that we can go to brunch. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a general, like we have to oppose the American settler project in totality. You know what I'm saying? It's not one person, one head, one face. I think that's one thing that we had to really understand, is that when we are talking about settler colonialism, we're talking about our current condition. It is not like one point in time currently where this thing begins at. It is a long-standing project. We cannot disconnect the idea of like chattel slavery and modern imprisonment, or the modern imprisonment in open air prisons of Black people in the United States. We can't disconnect these things, right? So they have to be very clear. And one aspect of that is, for us, what we did in one of the meetings we had recently was connecting ICE and the police, and saying that these are two forces, these are two occupation forces that are connected based on what their jobs are and who they serve. So again, it's not a coincidence that ICE can, go through and raid a community, imprison people, and detain them, and they die in detention. That happens in prisons all the time, right? All the time. Even think about the political prisoners that have died within the prison. One person that like me and one of the other comrades of Student Panthers, Ron, I've been getting into is Kwesi Balogun, and talking about how his condition as a I would say just an organizer, but he's way more than I can really define, like how he died within the prison and how that form of medical torture is what we're seeing similarly now. So I think that, it's been a very clear connection we've been trying to make, is that what you see ICE doing is not a exceptional moment in time where they've been created just for 2026. They are a manifestation and a progression of what occupation of communities looks like, you know. And with all that we've been able to study, and again, study being so essential for us, it makes us these things very clear when you can study the history and the implications and of oppression, of subjugation, of colonial life, you know, in general, and be able to relate it so they're not disconnected. Because I can't look at Donald Trump and say, man, this is just somebody that's such a deviation from the America I know. But some people will tell you that. Will tell you that shit. They will say that, yeah, this is like democracy is being ruined. You know what I'm saying? When you're black in America, you've never seen a democratic day in your life. You've never seen that shit. So at some point, like, we just really got down to saying that the only way to actually resist honestly is to know that, like, these current conditions are part of a general historiography, I would say, of what Black colonial life has been, and then connecting, of course, as we have always been doing internationally. It makes us a lot bigger of a project to tackle, but a lot more honest and explicit of a struggle to wage, you know. So that's kind of what we've been talking about as of recently, and we'll continue to talk about as we kind of go on.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I don't know if you're both able to fully follow the chat. It's been like a learned process for me, and I still miss like half the shit that scrolls up. But you're getting so much love from the chat. So if you're not seeing it, I highly recommend to go back and see all the folks who are appreciating um, the bars that y'all are spitting, as everyone keeps saying. I think that's a call to Jared.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
There are a couple of questions from the chat that I just want to make sure that I don't forget to ask. Sorry. Tony Unlearning says, what are the students' reaction when they see their own people being actors of violence? How do you work through this contradiction?
I guess it just depends on what, like, when, like, what you're talking about. Like, if you're talking about at the rally, like, the students were like, very like agitated, you know, when people were getting brutalized. So that was something that like made me smile a little bit to see that, like, okay, like, everybody's not chumps. Like, everybody isn't gonna tuck tail and run away. But broadly speaking, that like there's been a concentrated effort to muddy the line between like what is our people, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's now being like the political identity of blackness is kind of being removed, and just like anybody who is black is our people, and that's good. So if we're talking about policing our community, we just need niggas in uniforms. And that is something that is being pushed just like nationwide, but especially in the universities where they are trying to get these students to take on these police internships to be like the next, like, you know, black pig, in order to humanize the police, in order to like combat like the decade long, you know, physical occupation that the police have engaged against black people. So I think like this is a very like essential, like an important contradiction for black people to understand, especially young black people. And it's something that like, you know, our predecessors have already understood at a very high level, understanding that like the analysis of like black being black in a police uniform like literally means nothing. And in fact, they don't even consider you black anymore. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, getting back to that serious understanding of like how systems function and what that means for us. And then you know, and one thing about the state is that like, you know, they can keep lying, but ultimately like you're gonna have to be who you say you are one day. and if you're not, you'll expose yourself. So like the police say they're there to protect and serve, but we know for a fact they're there to protect and serve private property. And so like when they have these black police officers on your campus and they're saying like we're here to protect this campus, they're actually there to protect private property. So when it's time to like make action, when it's actually time to like prove and be who they said they're gonna be, they're gonna expose themselves like they did in our instance. When it was time for them to protect students and protect their right to demonstrate, they decided to serve their actual literal function. And that will make the contradiction plain. All we have to do as the conscious is to, agitate that and highlight what that actually means for us.
Yeah, and then I guess on a more broader like stance, because I think of like state actors as like those who are like black and keeping the machine rolling in a way, and the police do serve that. But I guess generally, I remember being on campus like the same night that like Kamala Harris had lost, because they had on the big screen watching that, like fumble, and seeing the responses and that and the reactions. I think when people understand and black people understand that there is no value in a black face in a higher place, like that is kind of where we can really build a struggle on. But currently there is not like that mass understanding, and it's building, understanding like just through the upfront violence that you see being committed. Like that is something that becomes very clear. But when you have someone like Kamala Harris, like Barack Obama, who is so heavily glorified by people, especially on the campus, you can see like different instances of that. You kind of get an experience where you're having to combat the ideas and the pedestals that these black state actors are on, and the response is often like first a defense. There's some people that would defend Obama before they defend their mom, before they defend their family, defend their community, and that's something that like has always been an issue, but way more now than before because of how the low intensity of the psychological battle the United States has been waging for years has kind of come up now and kind of come up to the peak that it is now. And like the contradiction there is that the defense you give to these state actors, to these black historical imperialists, like is misplaced, and that defense should be for the community. Is really what you tackle when it comes down to like black self-determination and black representation, determining where black people want to be or aspire to be at. Like we're trying to build like an intercommunal like a movement of people who want to be free, but we're still combating the idea that, oh, I miss Obama, he was a great president, he did so good, he's so much better than this. Or when Kamala Harris says, I want the most lethal military in the world, that's like, well, yeah, we got to defend ourselves. And the idea that my comment mentioned earlier on is like the allegiance to the United States that Central and other colleges try to build in students who are on the cusp of professional life is so blatant and clear when you can hear someone say, we're going to have a military that's going to kill anyone that gets in our way and genocide whoever gets in our way, and do these things in complete peace. And I can call a drone strike while I'm at brunch kind of talk, like saying like something that's real simple, real cute. Like that is like very widely accepted. And that is why there's a constant struggle to really counter that. And it's always going to be like, it's tough because we can do it physically, but it's an ideological battle that has to be won as well.
Just want to remind everybody, thank you for that, of Obama's, remember the Obama era Tuesday night pizza and drone strikes.
It's all Obama's fault. It's all his fault.
I wouldn't go that far, but he certainly didn't help things, but he absolutely continued that. So I just wanted to highlight that. And it was a literal thing. Every Tuesday they would get together for pizza and drone strike arrangements. So definitely appreciate all of that. Renee, you said there were other, you had other questions that you
no, I'm just kind of scrolling through the stuff that I starred as the conversation was
definitely
going.
Want to thank the super sticker from the 80th Prod. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. And Latif, same thing. Appreciate you. The constant support of the platform. Thank you very much.
Maggie
And please, people,
asked,
this new thing, hype the video. I don't know what I'm not entirely sure how this
I don't
thing.
even know what it means. Every time I see it, I'm like, what does that mean?
I think it's ways for people to have you, like, everybody gets a certain amount of points they can accumulate that they can use to hype videos of their choice to help reproduce. I don't know
Something.
Just if you see it, do all the things you see available.
Maggie asked, have you been able to connect with any comrades on the continent?
No, not as of yet. No, not as of yet. We are kind of keeping like our eye on, of course, on the African continent in general, seeing like the progressions of movements there. But we haven't made any clear connections yet. No.
And I'm almost. We don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm almost afraid to ask this one. But I feel like it's. I'm always curious how we deal with such things. So Reddy wants to know, how often do you have to engage with the FBA or ADOS folks in your efforts to organize, and how do you deal with that, if at all?
All right, we ain't ran into none of them freaks. I ain't gonna lie. And it's like, yeah, we don't really, we ain't ran into none of them freaks yet, man. When we do, we gonna point and laugh and maybe spit and maybe throw a chair, but we ain't ran into none of them yet.
I think the closest we've gotten is like the unconscious behavior that leads to that, like people who are like pledging some allegiance to the United States in some way. Like we always find, like, at least myself and a few of my comrades find some issue in like a lot of the conversations around reparations, and that kind of being what starts a process to getting to a certain point. Like that's what we kind of dealt with. But if we do run into FBA ADOS, I'm sure y'all will know when that happens.
It'd be a whole bunch of.
Shit.
Yeah, like it's not gonna be like, it's not gonna be.
By the way, LaRussell needs to hear from you fellas too. By the way,
fuck LaRussell. He is not heaven sent.
He said Adolf too. He said
ADOS and FBA, they heaven sent too, right? Come on now.
It was wild. He said something like Malcolm was heaven sent next to like Hitler and Trump. I'm like, hey, these are
Epstein, Hitler.
That's been like my
all of them.
I've been like saying that randomly though. Like, I need to stop though. Like Epstein too. I just be walking around the house. Epstein too, man. Epstein too.
That shit was nasty. He was
listen
like,
to your engineer. They're there to help you, rappers. Listen, he said. Your engineer tried to tell you, don't put this shit out.
I be trying to tell y'all, motherfuckers gotta stop falling for these fake, woke ass, lame ass rappers that be on that. Like that shit be garbage, and they be eating it up. Like he on that. He remind me of Will Smith.
Ouch.
Damn. No, that shit was such nonsense. You like, it's funny too because there's so many like. When it comes to like where we be at too, it's a lot of like fake woke, fake conscious people that really try their best to like push that they have a very solid politic. And then we've engaged with a few people who are along those lines. They don't make music because, you know, like I mean, I hope not at least. But like we engage with them directly, and it's very easy. And it's not to like build no like hierarchy and nothing like that. When you are conscious, it's very clear to just be like, yeah, that shit doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? Like very easy to say that. And I think like we've been confident in that recently because it's like we see so much nonsense being said, so many like concerned citizens, because like Durham itself has like a larger or like a supposedly larger issue when it comes to gun violence and like intercommunal violence. And we've seen so many different things proposed to address that. And it's always like without an economic analysis, always absent of that. So whenever you leave away like economic analysis when it comes to Black people and how they live and the manifestations of violence and so-called crime that occur, like it's already off top of nonsense analysis, you know? So like we've engaged with people along those lines, and it's like, you know, if you say that we need, I don't know, like evidence-based strategy to deal with violence, and yet evidence has nothing to do with like everybody here is poor, everyone here is looking for food, and no one here has proper sufficient housing. Everyone has to do what they need to do to survive. If it's without that, you're gonna go nowhere, as we always have kind of gotten at. And Durham has such a strange obsession with that type of approach, and often like it just kind of comes down to, okay, like your brother died, your family died, it's your fault for being where you were, and we gotta move past that expeditiously, because people are just gonna keep dying in the same way and gonna be blamed for their own death. So but these corny woke people, like people who be trying to pretend that they are on top of things, when it comes down to actual practice, that's where you don't see them no more. So we go to the practice field to actually engage and struggle directly, they're gonna disappear. That's how it always goes.
Yeah, but yeah, as far as like the FBA freaks that be online, that's some real chronically online shit. Like the ADOS, that's some real chronically online. You're like, but you will. I think there's a new strand of like exceptional FBA shit that is like you're able to like walk around and be in public. Is that if you like really start getting on that patriotism shit, like as a black person, like I'm not black, I'm an American. Like that's some real covert FBA shit. Now they ain't saying they indigenous, but like I'm not with none of you monkeys. I'm with the red, white, and blue, and that's where a lot of this shit is sort of trending towards.
Yeah, and one of the problems that I notice certainly in my classes with students is that even if they're not aware, like I might ask them, "Are you familiar with FBA and ADOS?" and they'll say no. But what I think they're unaware of are the ways that some of those arguments seep into their spaces.
Facts,
and they start to parrot some of that stuff. So yeah, I appreciate all of what it can go real quick from some black pride to we built this country to basically white nationalism. It's like a quick. Real quick.
They start sliding like, oh man.
Yeah, they talking about we built this country, and it comes down to like forgetting that you were coerced into that. And that's when you get the little like, oh, we built this country, we should be proud of what we have. We built this school, we should be proud of what we have. And it's like, I don't think you know this, but your grandma was killed for this. Your grandma, your family was murdered for this. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't remember that your history is wiped out for this project. So it's like, it's such a strange little.
Wait, you mean we weren't here first?
Shit. My grandma Choctaw, whatever the fuck, I don't know.
The land bridge. There's a land bridge.
The land bridge, exactly. I just was watching some of that last night. Chitty Macha, please. I'm afraid for you to send me that clip. I don't know what that means.
Send it to both of us, please. And
send it to both of us so Renee can suffer with me.
Palo Alto, we have so much stuff.
Yeah, we got a lot to get to.
Man, it's just a lot. There's a lot.
And I want to just quickly, I just want to be petty and selfish and shameless. Too Black is right. 1619 didn't get enough smoke for contributing to this tendency. I did try to bring the smoke to that project, and I lost a friend over that joint. Got kicked out of a chat group over that joint. So please check the content on this channel and elsewhere, because 1619, I did try anyway, but yeah, I want my credit.
And then real quick, Leah, thank you for the super
thank
sticker.
you, Leah.
Much appreciate you. Rob Ashley says, I'm up from NCCU now at the laundromat, Uplift Laundry, giving out cards so folks can do laundry for free and giving out free food on behalf of Feed Durham. Definitely shout out to Feed Durham.
Yeah, shout out our comrade. Shout out our comrade Ashley. We've been able to work together a few different times. Shout out our comrade, man. Really, real solid when it comes to trying to get shit moving in Durham. Real solid. So we appreciate you for real.
Dope. So with these last few minutes, I want to open, if there's something that folks in the chat or people who watch this later can do to support, if there's a call to action you all want to share, if there's anything that we missed that you want to make sure we don't forget to talk about. And, this definitely, as far as I'm concerned, will not be the last time. We'll try not to go a year, and I will try not to forget to answer your email 3 weeks next time.
It's cool. It's okay. It's okay.
I get so many emails, and the only defense that I have is I'm better at answering emails than Jared is, like 95% of the time. So
you gonna take that, Jared? Oh shit.
What can I say? What can I say?
Yeah, we on social media at Student Panthers Durham. That's where you want to keep up with us. Like where we post a lot of like immediate updates. We are taking donations just to like keep the organization running and to like fund our like legal fund, because we do have a couple campaigns coming up that we haven't publicized yet, but like we are gonna get into some more shit. So we do need y'all help, and we will need y'all help soon.
No doubt.
But yeah.
Yeah, I would say the socials, definitely keep with us on Instagram. Again, if you are like in the South, in North Carolina, in the general area, you can always like hit us up if you're interested in working, because we always looking for collaborations. Keep an eye on Instagram. It's been almost a year or so since the Speak Out rally, so keep an eye on, we trying to get into to mark that. But yeah, like, just appreciate the time coming to talk, and power to the people. You know what I'm saying?
Right on.
All right. Dope. No, go ahead, Jared.
No, I was just gonna close us out, but go ahead.
Just one real quick. So folks in Jersey, if you are local, tomorrow there's a Palestinian fair happening at the Grace Church in Jersey City. I dropped it somewhere and I lost it. I've lost where the link was. If I can find it before Jared says goodbye, I'll drop it in the chat. But folks have time to come out to that tomorrow. Definitely an opportunity to doing. They're trying to get people to understand how much money Jersey's putting into Palantir. So that's one of the things that they're focusing on that I think is probably critical to moving forward. Like we got to start getting these real
Alex
fights
Carr.
about. Yeah, man.
My half black, half Jew homeboy was hanging out with Trump again, CEO of Palantir. He was just at another Trump event. So yeah, all this public funding of billionaire imperialism is crazy.
Yeah, it's absurd. I just can't. And I think people miss, where people are so busy talking about Target and that being the path towards our collective freedom, that they're not even thinking about all the other things that are happening that are actually like, having an impact. But we're not going. I'm just gonna leave that there.
Keontae, we're gonna make a comeback, man. I'm doing the best I can, but I can't even front. We are down bad right now. We're struggling. I can't. Just remember, all that is popular is a fraudulent representation of what it claims to be. Just always everybody try to remember that. Underneath the popular presentation of everything, including biracials, is something a little more real and substantive. Yeah, I'm the anti-Carp. You know what I'm saying? Come on, man. We can't be all in the same crew. Me, Carp, and Drake are not the same. God damn it. Anyway.
I was just about to bring up Drake. I ain't gonna
man. Let me not start. I'll go down a whole other biracial rabbit hole today. I can't do that to everybody. But yeah, we're down bad. I'm doing the best I can to get us back on code. And I just want to thank Renee and our guests for helping everybody get back on code. And so thank you all very much. And please do check on their
I found the link. That's the link in the chat for the Palestinian event happening tomorrow in Jersey City.
Right on. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again. Please like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon. All the links are in the show description. As always, peace if you're willing to fight for it. Only, as Fred Hampton used to say, only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. And we'll catch you next week with more Saturday with Renee.
Black Liberation Media is a collective of Black and African organizers, journalists, academics, and media personalities serving Black and African masses seeking to further grow in their understanding of themselves, their histories, and the African world through entertainment and news. Please continue to like, subscribe, and donate to the channel so we can further serve you and liberate our people. You can also go to blkliberationmedia.org, get some merchandise, and also become a Patreon member. and a member from the YouTube. Please do what you can, share, and show your love as we will show ours for you. Black Liberation Media.